hello and welcome to Coproduce Care Chat. Today we've got two registered managers in social care, so I'm very excited to welcome Angela Farrow and Julie Lusk, who's given up their time to speak to us about life as a registered manager. So Angela, you are registered manager for Home Instead in services in Leicestershire. And Julie asked you to introduce yourself in a sec. But Angela, could you just start off explaining to us sort of like what you manage and the areas that you cover?
Okay, sure. I'm the registered manager of Home Instead in Market Harborough, Corby and Rutland. So we cover around 2,000 square miles. We're domiciliary care providers and we currently service around 107 clients, and we have around 90 staff who support people to live independently in their own homes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. And Home Instead as an organisation, that is all over the country, that you've got different sites all over, different branches. I think you were saying earlier about 211 branches.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. So it's good to have a view of someone who's got part of a large organisation. And coming on to Julie, you're sort of the other side of the spectrum, a bit like me, a bit small, a bit more niche. Could you just maybe go over the areas that you cover and what your service is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my name's Julie Lusk. I'm a registered manager for a residential service for 5 individuals. We support people with multiple different diagnoses. They could be behaviour challenge, mental health, learning disabilities, profound learning disabilities also, epilepsy. So a number of differences really. We also support a lady in an outreach as well in her own home. So I've been a registered manager for about 2 and a bit years, I think. So I've known the service for an awful long time. I've been at the service for over 5 years, working as a support worker to registered manager. So yeah, I know different levels in the service as well.
That's brilliant. And I think your journey coming from a support worker, working your way up to registered managers, is quite a common journey for people who progress through care. So maybe that's something that we could cover a bit later on. So we had a little chat and we talked about some of the things that we might want to go over. We did have one question that came through on I think it was Facebook, which we might go on to, about mental capacity a bit later. But I thought maybe we could start off, because it's all very current at the moment for both of you, with CQC and inspections. So we've got Angela, who you were just saying to me, you've just had your inspection, you've had your inspection report back, which is all very exciting. And then Julie, you're just about to do your PIR, which is to provide, I don't even know what it stands for, Provider
Information report.
Information report, thank you. So that's the document that the regulator of social care, health and social care, CQC, Care Quality Commission, asks for provider organisations to hand in, and they ask a lot of questions about the service. And that's used, I think, as a basis of where they might learn more about where to concentrate on when they do their inspection. So it's
that's actually changed, Sophie.
Yeah. So this is the new PIC, is it?
Pardon?
Is this the new PIR?
Absolutely. It used to be a pre-inspection report,
right?
But it has changed now that it will be an annual report. So it's an annual return that we need to make on the anniversary of when we first had our registration. Right. And the idea is that it gives each year, it gives the CQC current information on our status. And they can sort of, take that into consideration. Rather than previously, it was very much a pre-inspection report, and when you received that, you knew imminently you would be getting your whole report, but it only came every 3 years, whereas now we're going to have to complete this annually.
So it's just keeping CQC up to date with everything that we're doing, and then we'll have a time, because I've had mine recently, but not long ago had an inspection, so that makes sense, because it's
it's not just reporting on our particular service, it's also giving them statistics that they use in other areas to feed out to other data sets as part of the adult social care workforce data set.
Brilliant. So Julie, you've just done yours. What kind of questions have they been asking?
So they asked lots of questions in relation to the care and support that we deliver. One of them is around sort of recruitment and retention. There is things about our practice, so how we use communication, what effective communication do we use, how is the team trained, how do you ensure information is cascaded through the teams. It also talks about assistive technology, what technology do we use, and it's based, like Angela said, it was based every 12 so you have to answer questions within the last 12 months. Although I haven't had an inspection since October 2017, I had to relate to the last 12 months worth of evidence to sort of produce on the PIR. But the intention is that every 12 months CQC will send you the PIR. You have to fill it in. They normally give you a deadline of I think it's about 5-6 weeks. They give you a deadline. If you don't reply, then you will only receive responsive and well led. You won't get any higher than that because it is a mandatory assessment to fill in. You can obviously fill it in. I mean, I probably took about 20 hours or so to fill mine in, just because I wanted there to be a lot of detail in it. You can fill it in as less detail as possible, but the more you put in, the more the inspector and the CQC are going to know about your service.
It makes sense, doesn't it? It's almost like it's not a sales pitch, but it is. It's the time that you kind of sell everything that you're doing, all the hard work of your staff, and that's the time to show them that you're doing a really good job. Did you find that it was it took you a long time, but do you find like it's a useful exercise to just like lay out exactly what you're doing and how proud you are of your staff or whatever else you're doing?
I think it is, because I think it's your time to shine, isn't it? It's your time to say all the good things that you've done. And I think it'd been useful if I perhaps done a timeline of when I changed things, because I had to revert back and look at a lot of things to what I had changed, how we'd have changed them. So it was more of like a memory exercise to remember all the things you do, because the things you do is a day-to-day activity. You don't necessarily realise your good practice that you do every day and the changes that you implement every day. So I think it highlighted to me that I should maybe do a timeline of changes to keep on my desktop, just so it's a memory prompt to put in.
Do you find like there's a lot of pressure on you to complete it? Are you able to, because you're quite a small service, so I don't know whether you have anyone to share that responsibility to fill out the PIR, or whether you feel like this is my time, I've got to clear a few days out of or evenings or weekends out of my diary to just sit down and do this. Do you feel like you can share it, or there's a lot of pressure on you?
I think there's a lot of pressure on you to do it. I didn't really have anyone to go to ask anyone to help filling it in as such. Yeah, there was some prompts that I was able to gain from my regional manager, but everybody is obviously so busy at all times. Nobody has the exact time to do it. So I found it easier to do at home in my own time, just because you're not challenged by the other day-to-day role that's going on. The phone's not ringing, the emails aren't coming in, the demands aren't there. So I found it easier to do it at home. I did do some at work, but it wasn't as easy to do at work than it was at home.
So going on to like Angela, your experience of completing the PIR, do you find the same thing, or because you've got a bigger operation there going on with Home Instead, do you find there's different people that you will fill in different parts of it? How do you find the pressures in completing the PIR? Because it's essentially stuff that's in the PIR might go into the final report, which then determines whether you're outstanding, your rating. So I do find it quite quite a bit of a stress sometimes to get it right.
Yes, I think getting it right is important, and as Julie says, it's definitely a time to shine. It does take a long time collecting all the statistics that they want. I documented mine at 17 hours, so a similar length of time to Julie. So it's a significant amount of time, and it does come with a threat, because it comes with the overriding system that if you miss the deadline that of the time they give you to file it by, you won't be able to get higher than requires improvement in the well-led section of the Chloe's.
Oh, wow.
So it does come with a pressure override on it, and sometimes it's difficult to get that protected time in our workday life, because things happen with people, as we're dealing with, that have to be dealt with straight away. So yes, it can be difficult to get that protected time if you're a very hands-on manager as well.
So you had some issues with the PIR in terms of the systems versus care time. So a lot of people want to spend their time doing the care work and being with the person. Do you feel like some of the stuff, either what it asks you to do or evidence in the PIR, that takes time away from care and being on the ground? Or is it just the nature of what you're asked to do as a manager that means that you're more in the office than you are out sort of supporting people?
Yeah, you mean the division between whether you're the primary care manager as well as being the registered manager?
Yeah.
Yes, there is a lot of legislation and reports and compliance that is necessary to deal with, and I think if you are in charge of all that, it can be difficult if you're also the primary care manager, because that is quite intense, and supporting all the staff as well. And maybe the person hasn't had a lot of training in leadership and management if their primary responsibility has been care. I had a call from I have now filled in my own PIR, so I have a better insight, but one of the people in the registered managers support group that I work with called me up pretty soon after the new format came out, and she's very much the care manager as well, and she said the same sort of thing. It took so much time, and she was going to have to do it in the evenings and weekends, because there just isn't the time in her standard day to do that. And in a lot of other industries, that time would be just ring fenced, but it doesn't happen that I've heard of, that the nominated individual comes in and says, okay, I'll run the floor today, and you concentrate on getting the PIR done. That it just I can see the look on Julie's face, that's she's not heard of that happening either. So
be great to hear.
Yeah, so we don't get that support from anywhere else, and you certainly can't leave any client issues unattended. But at the same time, the pressure is on the registered manager to deliver a minimum of good or desirably outstanding in the CQC report. So we are under pressure to deliver that outcome, and we just have to fit it in as we can.
It's interesting you talk about two different roles. Talk about the primary care manager and the registered manager. So you've got them as two separate, whereas I understand it as the same thing. Julie, do you feel that's the same, or maybe you have the same in your organisation? You've got two different.
No, we haven't. No, so I am the registered manager, and obviously the primary care manager as well. I was a bit dumbfounded from what Angela said there as well, because there's only one of me, unfortunately. Yeah.
So I think that's probably the majority of people have only got that as well. So it's an extra challenge. Moving on then to the CQC and the rating system. Now, Angela, you were just telling me before that you got your report back for your service, and you got outstanding in all 5 categories. So congratulations, that's amazing.
Wow, well done, Angela. That's really, really good. Well done. I will look forward to reading your report. That will be really good to read.
I think it's just been published, Angela, were you saying, is it? Or
yes, it's been published.
Yeah, so brilliant.
We'll all be looking for that, because it's current as well. So presumably you've covered like tech and care, everything. So I wanted to know, I thought it might be interesting to discuss what you felt were the main things. Is there ever a main thing that's like makes somebody outstanding, or is it just a catalogue of different things that different people are doing?
It mainly comes out to collecting evidence on what difference what you are doing makes in people's lives. You know, it's a given, even to get good in all areas, you need to have good systems and processes in place. But it's not good enough to be outstanding just to have good systems and processes in place. You have to be able to demonstrate how your systems and processes have led to an outstanding outcome for your service users. And that's predominantly what it is. You know, how what is the point in having a great systems, policies and procedures manual if it doesn't make any difference to the people who are receiving your service? So it's how that impact has enriched their lives, and it's being able to evidence that makes the difference.
That I don't know if you find this, Julie, as well, but I hear what you're saying, and it makes absolute utter sense. But is the whole idea of being outstanding quite subjective? Because what my version of outstanding might not be your version, which might not be the CQC inspector's version. Do you see how have you got any examples where you feel, or that were in the report, which is an obvious example of how you've done something, it's made an impact, and that's definitely part of the judgment in making the service outstanding?
There are quite a few things, but for example, one that springs to mind, we had a gentleman that we were supporting with nutrition. So we were called to go in at lunchtime, and our caregiver was duly doing that, and they were arranging meals with him. And during conversation one day, she said, what's your happy spot in life? You know, what do you enjoy? And they got onto food, and he said, oh, do you know, I used to love a full English, but I can't cook for myself now, so I tend to just have cereal and toast, and then we would come in at lunchtime, make him a meal. And she said, well, how about once a fortnight, because we talked about his cholesterol levels and all the other things in life. She said, how about just once a fortnight, we ask your family to include in the shopping all the things for a full English, and you can enjoy having a full English. And that's what they did. The family bought all the supplies in once a fortnight, and they would look forward to this day, you know, next Wednesday's the day, that's your fortnightly full English. And they took a selfie of themselves with this, you know, lovely plate of full English breakfast, and that enriched his life. And it's a little extra. So yes, we were already meeting all the requirements of going in and supporting him with nutrition, but by going that extra step and saying, well, you know, what's important to you in life, you know, what's your happy place, and you know, and discovering that he was missing that, and making that possible for him within taking consideration his medication needs, you know, with his cholesterol levels, and taking into consideration his nutrition needs and all the rest of it. You know, we were able to enrich his life, really. And I think that's the outstanding bit, is how you can make something possible for somebody that wouldn't routinely be possible just by the care they're receiving.
Which is kind of what you'd expect, I suppose, is that people are making a massive difference to people's lives. And I wonder whether sometimes as managers we undersell ourselves, because we don't realise the amazing stuff that we're doing. We're just doing it, and then when we come to talking about it, we're not trained in being good salespeople. We need to be a bit better with just telling those lovely stories that our staff are doing all the time. Is that part of it?
That's very relevant to what Julie was saying about keeping a timeline going, because when somebody asks you, or what have you done that's special in the last 12 months, or in the case of an inspection in the past 3 years, it can be really difficult to come up with examples of why that is. And so, you know, when you have team meetings and service reviews with your clients, you know, it's capturing that information and popping that on your timeline, so that you can say, oh yes, you know, this is when this happened, and you know, this made a difference to that person. When you get compliments come in, you know, we're fortunate, we receive a lot of you know, thank you cards and complimentary emails save them and use them and say, yes, this really made a difference to this person. Because otherwise, if we don't tell them, CQC can't tell a good provider from a bad provider.
Yeah, definitely. Julie, do you feel like you've got a lot of you probably will have a lot of stories where you've changed people's lives, especially in your type of services, when people often struggle to do some of the things that we do every day, that your staff are just enabling them to make a difference in their lives?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, so it's exactly what you said when you said that we don't sell ourselves. When somebody says to you, so what have you done that's amazing, your mind just suddenly goes into this fog, and suddenly you can't share all the good work. And sometimes in this role, it's so because the role is so demanding, and you're so bogged down by the day-to-day running and the concerns and the problems and the safeguardings and things like that. It's very easy to let those finer details slip by, and just they become the norm. Whereas, it's good that they are the norm. The norm of these everyday small changes, i.e., like Angela said, with the nutrition, we've got a gentleman that we support, and he has to have a fortified diet, and part of that is he needs to have these cow shakes included with his food. And he got to the point that he was finding them so bland and so untasteless to have, that he was refusing them. So we did a whole menu plan, and we introduced these foods. We got multiple flavors. We could introduce them to beans, to soups, to any kind of food you can think of. So that really helped him. So I think it is about sharing the ideas, writing down the good stuff, because it is so easy to get blindsided by the day-to-day and everything else that's going on.
Great, thanks for that. One of the things that I thought would be good to do, actually, some people who might be watching who don't really know what a registered manager's job is, which I think, it's probably a really good thing to define it, because what even is it? We do so much. But one way of kind of exploring it might be for you to go over what, on a typical day, if there is ever a typical day, you might have to deal with. So it might even be that you just get up and then you've got missed calls, or that you get to the office and that's when it starts. Does anyone want to? I'll start off with one of my typical days that I had. And I remember getting to work, and it was really nice and quiet. And then they had a knock on the door, and it was the local authority who were doing an inspection, which is fine. They came in, I wanted to talk to everyone. And then I was dealing with all of that. And then you have clients coming in wanting some support, and then you've got families wanting to just check up on things. You've got things booked in the diary, and you're dealing with a lot of different issues that you've got to deal with on any single moment that could happen. So that, I feel, is quite a busy day. But you might have days when it's a lot quieter, and then you decide to go out on a trip with someone. I haven't done that for a long time because I'm doing similar things, but that's some of the stuff that I used to really enjoy. I don't do as much of the registered manager on the ground anymore, so you guys will have a lot more current things that you can think of. So does anybody want to start off with some of the things that they're dealing with on a typical day? Angela, did you want to?
Yes, I'm happy to go. Yeah, typical day is a lovely word, isn't it? Because I think we live our lives in atypical days by and large, but we do have certain core things. So generally my day starts by reading the overnight on-call report to see if anything's happened since I left the office the night before. And then our schedulers take over the on-call from the on-call manager at 8 o'clock in the morning. So we then look and obviously if there's any client details, pass them over to the relevant person to look after. Has anybody called in sick? And that has two folds, because we have the client calls, because we do matching, we can't just send anybody into any client, so it has to be somebody from their care team to cover. So we deal with all that. We then have to consider on a wellbeing basis, we're very keen on looking after our caregivers' wellbeing as well as our clients. So if they're off sick, we look to say why they're off sick. Is it a sort of a 24-hour cough and cold type thing, or is there a wider issue? Are they going to need support? How long are they going to be off for? What needs discussing in their return to work interview, that kind of thing. Other emails might be from relatives, changes to circumstance. So there are a lot of things. And then, as I said, I'm also the chair of the Registered Managers Association. So there are those meetings to organise. We meet every 2 months for that. And together with Julie, we're both part of the Registered Managers Reference Group. So there might be little bits and pieces to do for that. There's all the standard management things, making sure the appraisals are done, our compliance things. So yes, there's always a big variety, which is great. And then once in a while, there are certain clients that if something crops up with one of my assistant care managers, and they were perhaps due to do a service review with somebody, so they can't do that because they need to get out and deal with a more frontline issue, I'll perhaps go out and do a service review or something, which is a lovely thing to do, because for two reasons really. One is because it just reminds you of the bits that you really enjoyed a lot when you first came into the role anyway. That contact with the clients is lovely, and it might be a client that I might have set up originally, and I might not have seen them for a couple of years, so that's lovely to go out and see them as well. So there's lots of variety of things in supporting the staff and the caregivers, and making sure we keep up with all the compliance for all the various pieces, whether it be National Office or CQC or HMRC. I
feel like there's a list we could just go. There's literally
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're on the variety of things that you have to deal with. I mean, somebody might have passed away, and we need to do the bereavement policy. We need to make sure we hit the phones and catch all the care teams so that they all know what's happened, before they're shocked by hearing it from another source. So lots. Like you say, almost an endless list of things that you could say that it encompasses.
And Julie, because your services are quite different, again, is there anything other than what Angela's talked about that you feel that sometimes you have to deal with?
So I think it is important to say that actually our typical day is never a typical day than what we expect it to be. I am a big believer in lists. I write down lists and lists and lists, but actually quite often the information is stored in my head rather than the list itself. I think sometimes if I achieve a couple of things that are on my list in the day, I'm winning, because sometimes everything else comes into place that you just don't get a chance to do. So my day, I am a bit of a workaholic, if I'm honest with you, and my day normally starts with before I leave the house, I'll check sort of phone calls and emails and things like that. I'll come into work, and I usually arrive into work about half an hour before I'm due to start. Make sure everybody's okay in the home, like Angela said. If anyone's sick, then we sort of work out a plan how we can sort of keep the home safe at that point, whether that's ringing around staff members or swapping and juggling things around. I go through emails. We have an internal a CMS, which is electronic care planning, so I check that for messages, sort of any from the care team and handovers and things. That's the sort of general first rule of thumb that we do. Then the people we support, they normally start getting up and ready. I'll help with their morning routines where needed, really. This morning I helped a gentleman get up, and I haven't supported him for a couple of weeks, and he was quite excited to see me, so that's really nice that that you can keep in touch that way, and to ask is everything okay, and just have those happy morning smiles. I usually have a coffee every morning with a gentleman we support. He comes into the office and he comes in, gives me a massive bear hug and sits with me and has a coffee. He doesn't normally like to talk and to say an awful lot, but he just likes to come in and sit with me. I've supported him when I was a support worker as well, so it's really nice that we have that same relationship, that he can come in. Certainly after the coffee's ran out, he walks away as if to say, yep, I've done the morning duty, I've done what I need to do, and he walks away again. But he's quite happy to come in and do that. And then the day kind of takes over, really. So it's about multitasking. You can be doing 20 different things at once, and but I have to write it all down, otherwise I do forget what needs to be done. And then there are the standard sort of roles that need to be done every day or every week, like ensuring supervisions and making sure all the compliancy stuff is done, and arranging team meetings, and then you have a staff member that might turn around and say, have you got 5 minutes, and they just want to offload for 5 minutes, or so it's really about multitasking, but also about time management, really. Trying to make time management work. To be honest with you, time management is one of my downfalls. I'm not very good at time management. One being that I due to finish work at 5. I never leave at 5. If I leave at 6, I feel as though I'm winning. Sometimes it's later than that, and in the evenings. I do try at weekends too, apart from when I conduct on-call facilities, to stop work at weekend, put the phone away, and have some downtime, because otherwise it would be very easy to do this role 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There would be enough work to keep you in the role, but you do need some time to reflect on yourself and not let the role take over.
Yeah, I think that's one of the questions, isn't it? How do you, as a registered manager, maintain your own well-being with the pressures we've just talked about from the regulator? Then you mentioned about staff coming in to offload, because when someone offloads, it's not like that's it, close the door, carry on. Sometimes there's about 5 or 6 action points from that, and then you've got, the provider might have things you want to. So like you were saying, there's so many different things you could be doing all the time. You've got to learn to switch off. How do you feel that you are looking after your own well-being in a time when there's so much about everything's got to be good leadership? It all happens from the manager. It's all about well-led. How are you maintaining your own well-being to keep running a really good service?
Do you want me to come in on that?
Yeah.
Sophie? I think one of the important things is bearing in mind what of your list you can delegate. I'm another great one for list, and I tend to highlight on my list of things the 6 things that I really need to achieve on that day, and then I look at everything else on the list and think, what could I delegate to somebody else?
Right.
And I think it's one of those difficult things, because sometimes you have to make time to train the person to be able to do the tasks that you want them to do, but it's a saving in the long run, because then you can't do everything yourself, and so you do need to have to, certainly as the service grows, you have to learn to delegate to other people, and make sure that they're doing things in the correct way, so that you can then relax knowing that task is being taken care of. And maybe you can have it in a way, in a lot of the things that I have, where they give me the KPIs either weekly or monthly, depending on what it is, so that I can keep a watching brief over it and reassure myself that what I think is being done is in fact being done. But I think it is that, delegating, so that we're not the only person, and realising to ourselves, because sometimes we can be our own worst enemy in thinking that nobody else can do it as well as we can. And sometimes we do need to teach ourselves that we sometimes, over certain areas, we need to let go. And focus on the ones, on the areas that we really do want to keep our fingers on the pulse with.
And I think that's a really good tip, actually, because I've just started using a coach, and I was talking about, feeling overwhelmed with everything I've got to do. And he said, you and your team should just, like you said, write down a list of everything you do, and then look at that list and actually decide, do I have to actually be doing that job? Or could I give it to someone else? And I thought that's actually a really good task. It's hard to do. And then when I asked some of my other managers to do it, there were some things like administrative things that they were spending ages doing, like type of filing, and they were like, actually, I could give that to someone else, or even with more responsibility, I could give that to someone else. And what that does is that helps bring them up because it gives them more responsibility, and it lessens my load. But sometimes it's hard to just let that go because you think it's going to take them a couple of hours to do it. I could do it in 10 minutes, but eventually it will take them 10 minutes, but you've got to give it to them in the first place. So I think that's a really good tip. Julie, I know you've recently started to support someone else to come up in your home. Have you found it easier having other people to delegate to? Has that helped with helping you, giving you more time?
Yes, it has. Yeah, like Angela said, I am, and I said earlier on, I'm a bit of a workaholic, but I'm also a control freak. So I do try and do everything myself. So it is hard. You do need to have that leap of faith, show somebody what to do, and then if they don't do it exactly right, then it's about giving them constructive criticism. It's not certainly a blame exercise, because we all learn, we all have to adapt. There isn't a guidebook that tells us what to do. We just do it because we learn what needs to be done. So yeah, it's about delegating the role. I sometimes find that I delegate it to one person and then that person will delegate it to someone else. That's probably one of my pet hates, because like, no, I've given you that task to do. It's not yours. It is for you then to delegate it to someone else. So yeah, I think it's about having confidence in your team, and about effective management, not micromanaging, because I think micromanaging is a horrible way to manage, telling people how to do it your way. They might have done something, it might not be your way, but actually it is as good as it needs to be. So it's about ensuring that you adapt your views, because they are your personal views. They're not necessarily the task isn't performed any differently. It's just not your way.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that's hard to do, but it helps the whole team work together. So in terms of getting the right staff, I thought we would move on to what's always talked about in social care, which is recruitment. It's obviously you both with running very different services. Yours, Julie, is accommodation based, so people are in one place the majority of their shift. And then Angela, you've got the other side of it where people are in and out of different houses, different people, different care plans they're reading over the course of their shift. Presumably you've still got the issue with recruitment, but it'd be nice to hear about your different issues, or maybe you don't have issues with recruitment, I don't know. But maybe Angela, from a home care point of view, it would be good to know kind of some of the issues that you face with first.
Yes, I think recruitment is a very hot topic, and it's something that we constantly work on. And when I'd finished saying all the things on the list, I thought, yeah, I didn't even mention about recruiting, which is a constant situation with us, because we are in the situation where we can expand the business, and there are lots of people who are wanting support, but our ability to support clients is directly linked to how many care workers we have to offer them in their team as a client match. So we tend to have a waiting list of clients wanting support, rather than having the work and looking for because we've got a vacancy. So we're constantly recruiting. We recruit on a values-based recruitment system because our thoughts are that our culture and our ethos is what makes Home Instead special. And it's not a case of just paying lip service to that. You have to have a situation where the whole team, everybody is all working towards that. So our values-based part is much more relevant than the actual skills that they come with. We have a very rigorous training program that has won awards for. And we also have additional training that is City and Guilds ratified. So we feel quite confident that we can train anybody in the care skills that they need, but we can't train them to have the same ethos and values as we have. So that's the primary part of that, really.
Sorry to cut you off, but just on the values-based recruitment, now that's one of the things that's really popular. Everyone's talking about it, but what does it actually mean, and how are you actually doing it?
What it actually means is the important. I mean, I can give you a reverse example if you like. As part of the recruitment process, we start with somebody makes an application in the usual way. We then do a telephone screening cover first, then they have a face-to-face, and then they come in for a full day, and we go through in much more detail how and what our service looks like. And we look at things like attitude, commitment, ethics, and we have different scenarios. And despite all those preliminary things that had gone through, we were there one day. I think I said to you earlier that one of the things about our service is we provide a minimum of 1 hour support, because we feel that it's not just about covering somebody's needs, it's about supporting the fight against isolation. It's about building relationships, because that building relationships builds trust. So
that's so people understand because you're home care, you go into other people's homes. So you could back in the day, commissioners were commissioning 15-minute visits. Exactly. And then it's 30 minutes.
And could be anybody. They may not see the same person that month.
Right. So, but you're saying that Home Instead, the policy is for home care, go and visit people, it's no less than 1 hour visits.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
And so, and despite all of this, we had this one lady who said, at the end of the day, we were doing the roundup, and she said, well, yeah, I get it, but if you've done everything that's needed on the care plan, and in 40 minutes you can go. And no, you can't, because there's always something. If it's making a drink, talking to the person, finding out what's important to their life, how could we enhance their life, what would they like to do in the future, there's always something you can do to make valuable use of that time. And if somebody doesn't understand that building relationships is important, and it's not just about what their basic needs are, it's about enriching their lives and helping them to live well. If they're not with us on those values and don't want to live that culture, it doesn't matter how many training courses we put them on, whether it's e-learning or face-to-face, they are never going to make the grade as a Home Instead caregiver, because they don't share values.
That's helpful. Thank you for that. So Julie, quite a different service that you've got. What are the issues or, the ways that you recruit, which you find are helpful, that you're coming up against?
So I'm really lucky here at Clinton Lodge. There's been many people here that have worked here for years. When I did the PIR, I was flabbergasted actually that only one person has left in the last 12 months.
Wow.
So that was really good to show actually we have some really good retention. Yeah, so it's about employing the right people for the service, like Angela said. It's about people with the right core ethics and values, the people that actually want to make a difference. The role of a care worker is a really hard role to do. They've got to be responsible for someone for the care team here. They actually do 12-hour shifts, so they've got to be responsible to someone for 12 hours of the day, and that's every aspect of their life. That's all nutritional needs, that's all health needs, that's all every need possible. You know, they've got to look into it all, and they have such a responsibility. And I think the care team, they are undervalued for what they do. The hourly rate that they get paid is really poor in relation to the role they have to give. So it's about employing the people that are here, not necessarily they're here because they want a job. They're here because they want to make a difference in someone's life. And those people are really hard to get because everybody needs to work. Everyone needs to obviously pay bills. That's standard. But it's about having those people that are here for the right reasons. We are a small, close-knit team. We all work together. We all pull together. But it's about having different people with different skill sets. So we employ sort of a number of male care workers as female care workers, ranging from all ages, from the age of 18 to the age of 65. So it's all of those people have got different skill sets. Some of them may be good in one aspect, we're not so good in another, but as a team they all gel together. I often say we're all like a jigsaw piece and we all bring our own piece to the party, and we're all unique in our way. And I think that's what makes the good team, when you all have a different skill set and you all work together so well. But it's about keeping those people, because there are multiple jobs out there as a support worker, and they work 100 yards down the road and probably gain at least 50p an extra hour more, which 50p an hour is a lot of money. And then more some, there are providers out there that do provide that do pay care workers at £10-11 an hour, which is a more realistic wage, and I can't compete with that. So that's probably one of the trials that they have about competing with the other wages.
Yeah, and in terms of keeping staff, some of the great ways is to train them and make them feel valued and throughout, but sometimes the care sector itself isn't really conducive to enabling us to do that. I'm thinking of some people in certain areas in social care are arguing for having the care sector professionalised, a little bit like you've got in health or in the NHS. I think, Angela, you were talking to me earlier about that. Did you want to go through why you thought that would be a good idea?
Yeah, yes. I think we were talking earlier about the care certificate, which is a start to having a standardised certificate that meets the 15 standards of care, but it doesn't have a central regulatory board overseeing it in the way that NVQs do. So if somebody comes to me and they've already done the care certificate somewhere else, I still feel that they need to go through all of our training, because I've no benchmark on the quality that the previous company has done to enable them to meet those 15 standards. So I would like to see a regulatory board for that, so that we could all feel confident that if somebody came to us with the care certificate, and I think the care workers themselves would feel that it was of greater value if it were a universal qualification, because people do like to feel they're earning qualifications, and they do like to feel that they're of value. And we have two courses. We have a dementia care course and an end-of-life training and palliative care course, and both of those are ratified by the City and Guilds. So, and I think that's, sort of a very reputable place, and rather than even though Home Instead itself has a great reputation in the marketplace, I think it's still nice for the care workers to have a certificate that's validated by the City and Guilds of being a nationally recognised and admired organisation.
Yeah, that's a really good point with having it professionalised and regulated, because the care certificate is something that qualification that people are supposed to have when they start care, and it goes through the different standards, and and if you're new to care, you'll have it in induction. It might take a few months, might take a bit less. But like you say, if you're a care worker and you've done it with one organisation and then you come to another organisation, you move on and they're saying, oh, sorry, but we're not too sure about the standard of your certificate, you're going to have to do it again. I mean, that must feel quite demoralising for them to think, oh, I've got to update myself again or whatever. So it would be better if it's a bit more standardised. Do you find that in terms of feeling valued, that there's a little bit of an issue with care workers feeling valued in the work that they do? Julie, maybe you've got some experience in that, or maybe it's not a problem with the people that work for you.
Yeah, I think it is really important to make sure that the care workers feel valued in their role. And I think sometimes it's very easy for outside professionals to blame care workers for not conducting proper care because they're not seen as a professional. And I think that I agree with what Angela says. It needs to change, that actually care workers need to be recognised that they are a professional. They are carrying out a very important service that the people we support wouldn't have as enriched lives if they didn't have these great support workers that support them. So it is about valuing them. We sort of run different sort of monthly topics. So each month we have like a nomination and anyone can be nominated for anything. It's about and the care workers nominate each other. I nominate staff as well. It's about recognising it. At staff meetings we always say anything really good that's happened or any changes, and that could be personal lives as well as, you know, if someone's passed a driving test or somebody's provided really great support and we've had this email from family to commend them on their support. So yeah, it is important for them to feel valued, because I think they're probably more undervalued than what they are valued from the outside, from outside of the organisation.
Yeah, and in terms of the other issues that are coming up for registered managers generally, because we're both part of a network, one of the things that Angela, you mentioned was the changes to the dole system that's coming in next year, deprivation of liberty safeguards. And that's putting a lot of onus now on the registered managers potentially. Was that one of the main issues that you thought were coming up around doles?
That came up in our network, because within, as you know, I'm in domiciliary care, but within the network that I'm chair of, there were quite a few of the registered managers who, over the past months, have felt a degree of impending doom over the changes that are happening and the amount of responsibility that would be placed on them. At our last meeting, I got the impression that it's been deferred again, and maybe the registered managers won't now be required to do it all. But there's such a degree of flux about it that I think the unknown is part of the pressure of it. But Julie, being residential, will probably have more of an input than I do on that. So, you know, we might want to go to Julie to comment on that.
Did you have any issues with the upcoming doles? Did you, Julie, or detect that from anyone else?
I think, yeah, we need some guidance as to what is going to be expected from the registered managers. It's all hearsay, if buts and maybes at the moment. This is what's going to happen. The registered manager is going to be having more influence in this. But there has been no sort of talk about how registered managers are going to be trained in this field and supported. The code of conduct isn't available yet. That won't be available until spring, and that was due to be available before. So, yeah, it's about how much onus is going to be put onto the registered managers. We've already talked about how increasing the role is, and then additional pressure put on. And also, is it a bit of a conflict of interest? You know, we're now supposed to be authorising these doles, but these doles we're enforcing. Is it a conflict that we're authorising them? Who gives us the right to enforce these doles that we're putting in place. So yeah, I think there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered, and like Angela said, it is the doom and the fear of the unknown, because we don't really know what's going to be happening, but we're expected to have this all ready for next spring, but none of us know what's going on.
Yeah, and essentially it could be as a care home provider putting restrictions on someone's movement or care in their best interests, and there's a whole framework around it, and then registered managers are supposed to be reviewing whether those restrictions are relevant or current or necessary at certain intervals. I think that's how it's going to work. So you essentially be marking your own homework in a way. So it does seem a little bit, like you're saying, like a conflict of interest there. So I think you're probably right. A lot of managers are worried about, what it's going to entail and what that's going to mean for them if they get it wrong with all of the other responsibilities that they've got. Were there any other issues that have come up in what you do as registered managers or in your networks that we haven't covered that you thought probably should mention? Or we've pretty much gone a whistle-stop tour around a few things, haven't we?
I think there needs to be a level of professionalism for registered managers, because like I sort of worked my way up through the ranks, obviously gaining qualifications along the way, but there's no actual guidebook, there's no this is what you do, this is how you do it, you just learn and adapt. So I think there needs to be a level of professionalism, because when you talk to other professionals, social workers, nurses, care coordinators, they have a level of professionalism, but the registered manager isn't always seen as being the professional person. So I think there needs to be more of a professionalism for registered managers.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to bring up, Angela?
No, I just absolutely agree with everything Julie said. The drive for making registered manager a regulated and qualified post, I think, is really important, and I think that would be valuable for companies who are employing a registered manager, because it must be very difficult for people to validate quite how much the registered manager knows, because we haven't had to. The level 5, which is the minimum qualification under the MVQ thing, touches a little bit on leadership and management, but not very much. And I think, again, as Julie said with this DOLS, it's one more responsibility that's going to be tossed at the registered managers without any proper training in what to do. And I think there are so many aspects of what we're expected to do in our daily life that are just added on without really any nod being given to, has that person been trained to fulfill that task, or are they just swimming away and gradually feeling as though they're drowning more and more each month as some of the responsibilities put on them that they've not been trained to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. And I almost feel like the whole DOLS LPS issue is a whole interview on itself, by itself. I think maybe we'll run some a whole themed set of interviews on that in the new year. I think that might be useful, just to explore the implications of it. So normally at the end of a call, we do the cactus questions, and I have thought of a couple. I didn't have any to start with, I told you. So cactus questions are prickly questions about health and social care. I actually have my cactus with me now, so you can see how prickly they are. This is really, really prickly. It's one of those ones where you just look at it and it prickles you. Anyway, so first one isn't too prickly actually, but it's just generally to find out what you thought about it. So we're in general election time now. It's Brexit is the big issue. How do you think Brexit, if it goes ahead, is going to affect your services? Angela, did you want to start off from a home care perspective?
Yes, we're fortunate we don't have a high percentage of our workers who will be implicated by this. So I don't think it's going to have a great impact on us. But we have obviously we have put into place a Brexit impact plan. We have let any of those who may be affected know that you know, we're working with them, and again, a little bit like the dolls issue, you know, there's lots of bits and pieces that have come out, but nobody knows for sure what's actually going to happen. And you know, those that already have a permit to work here, how that's going to change. So I don't envisage it's going to make a big issue with us, but what I am concerned about is the level of anxiety that scaremongering may cause the workers that we do have from the other EU states, and it's important for them to know that that we will be closely following any changes, and you know, we are there to support them.
Julie, did you have a similar or different experience on Brexit?
Yeah, like Angela said about anybody that is outside the EU that works here, yeah, the implications for them, but also about our suppliers. So how we're going to be, we've done a sort of Brexit continuancy plan, but again, it is unknown. We don't really know what the trials and tribulations are going to be. So it's about our suppliers. You know, we sort of provide lifts and hoist equipment and wheelchairs and all sorts of different things, and some of these are manufactured in the EU. So are we going to have difficulties obtaining those parts? And also with medication as well, we are seeing some effects from Brexit with medication. They're not able to get certain brands things in, so it's about working with the pharmacist, working with the GP about what medication can be adapted and different brands change and what effects they'll have on the people we support. So I think that will be something that is quite apparent, and I think it will become more apparent as we go on. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cost cutting exercise going on, and yeah, I think there'll probably be more of it with Brexit as well.
Yes, yeah, that could potentially have a massive effect. Okay, so second question is, there's a lot of talk about integrating health and social care, and obviously health, you know, we've got the NHS, National Health Service. Do you think that in order for social care to move up the scale better, pay and pensions and all the other benefits that might come with being in a nationalised service, do you think that social care should be nationalised? Does anyone want to take that first, or shall I just pick someone?
I don't know whether it should be nationalised, just because we are in a state at this time of uncertain times with the NHS. I think if we throw in there that social care is nationalised as well, that's going to come with a huge number of problems alongside it. I would love for the two to co-collaborate and work together. They are very, they do work alongside by side. It would be so much more straightforward if they both did, rather than talking to different areas. You're talking to health about one thing, social about another. It would be so much easier if they were interlinked. I do think that there's a more glorified approach if you work for the NHS than if you work for social care. I think it's seen as more glorified. So I've just had 3 team members that have handed their notice in all at the same time. They've worked here for an awful long time. They're all 3 really, really good support workers. I'm really sorry to lose, but they're going to the NHS because they've been promised that they will put them through their nurse training, which is great. And, you know, I don't want to stop anyone with career progression and to move on. But I think that sometimes the glorification of NHS isn't necessarily what it's going to be. I would love to think that they did get their dream and they got to do the nurse training, but I have heard of many horror stories where people have left social care with the expectation that they're going to go to the NHS, they're going to be trained to be a nurse, they're going to move on to bigger and better things, and actually it doesn't materialise because the funds aren't there, because there's lots of people that want to take that route that is simply not an option for them. And I just I feel that we're losing those people that are really good at their role because it seemed more glorified to go elsewhere.
Yeah, and Angela, do you have any views on that?
Yes, I do. I think it comes back to the same old thing. It comes back to professionalism and it comes back to benefits. I think working for the NHS is seen as the primary role because of the professional status that healthcare assistants are receiving, and also the benefits that they get. You know, that they receive blue light discounts, and I think that system could be extended to care workers. Care workers always had the reputation of being the poor relation to NHS workers, and I think that's a poor thing that needs addressing. You know, that people are not just a care worker; it's a very important and valued job. And certainly in our case, because we have a high proportion of part-time workers, they very much come into the work because they want to do something good for society. So being validated, being rewarded, being made to feel that they're doing a valuable job and is worthwhile is very important, and in a lot of cases is more important than pay. So I think, working on the professional status and working to give care workers the same benefits that NHS workers get would be a very good move. And as far as nationalising it, I think that, you know, that there already is a mirrored version, because people are able currently to receive social care. It doesn't come with all the frills and bells that the private care give. You know, we are predominantly a privately contracted company. We don't take government contracts, so we're not under that same pressure. We do cooperative working, so we do have clients who are part funded by social services or part funded by continuing health. So I think there is a degree of collaborative working, and I think that collaborative working could be extended. I think there's more work to be done working with discharge teams in hospitals around unsafe discharges and the confusion around medically fit for discharge and socially fit for discharge.
Right, that's very interesting. And lastly, do you feel that CQC is a help or a hindrance to your role as a registered manager? I know some people have great relationships with their CQC inspector, and they can go to them for support and advice in some areas around how they are supposed to be complying with regulations, but other people have a very different experience. In your opinion, do you feel that the relationship that you have with your inspector or the regulator helps or hinders what you need to do as a registered manager? Maybe Julie, you can have a stab at that first.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I don't have a great relationship with my CQC inspector. Not that there's anything bad about that. It's just we've had a few sort of leave in the area, so there hasn't been one established one that I've able to build a relationship with. And yeah, I wouldn't. I don't feel that CQC are a hindrance. I like the fact that we're governed by somebody and there are regulations to meet. But also, I think that there could be some work to support the registered manager more, rather than it just be a sort of tick book exercise, which I find some people say the inspection is about. If you tick these boxes, you get good. But then there's different levels of what good can look like. Good can look like you just barely hitting what is required, but also good can be you're exceptionally good and you can be almost outstanding, but yet the inspector on that day doesn't you don't hit their requirements, but if you had a different inspector you could hit their requirements. So I think I don't think they're a hindrance, but I think there needs to be a level of across the board level with all inspectors, rather than personal preference as to who they give outstanding and good to, rather than who they give any rating to. Because I've known of people that have got outstanding and I'm just like, how on earth did you get that? You know, they certainly haven't jumped through hoops. They've said things, but they haven't evidenced everything they've done, but yet they've got outstanding. But yet there are people that have almost jumped through hoops and gone the extra mile, but haven't gained that outstanding.
So many variables, I think, to it, and it's going back to what we were discussing about the potential subjective nature of the inspection as well might come into it. Angela, what were your thoughts on that?
I think consistency among inspectors is very important, and I have personally, I've found our inspectors have been very helpful, but I have heard of other people who have met challenges. So I do think that's a valid point. We recently at our registered manager support group, we had a member of the CQC come along from their pharmacy division, and she was talking to us, and she said that we need to bear in mind that they are a regulatory body and not an advisory body. Yeah. So sometimes I think the amount of help you get might depend on how the question is framed to them. For example, if you said, we have this circumstance, this is what we are doing, will this meet our regulations? Whereas if you'd said, how should we do this? What should we do about this situation? They can't advise us on what we should do. So I think, that difference between regulatory and advisory. I don't think they're a hindrance, and like Julie, I very much feel that the need for a regulatory body, I think somebody does need to be overseeing, because it's such an important area that we support people in, and people's lives are impacted by this. So having a regulatory board is really important. Yeah. And I guess there's always going to be a line, and there's always going to be somebody that falls one side or the other side of a line. So nobody's going to be totally happy with regulatory board, but I do think they're necessary.
Great. And it's almost Christmas. Sorry to say, we're like 2 weeks away. Are you doing anything, or what are you doing to celebrate Christmas for the people that you support? Angela, did you want to kick off?
Yes, we do several things for our staff. You can imagine having somewhere between 80 and 90 to staff, spread out over the 2,000 square miles can make it difficult to work together. So everybody gets an individual card and gifts, and we organise different groups of things to do. This year we're doing paint bottle making, so we all met and we decorated a Christmas mug or plate that we fancied. So that's a nice little keepsake to have.
Lovely.
We have team meetings in each of our regions, so we do an extra little, fun session for that. So
that's lovely. Julie, you doing anything special your end?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can see, but I'm wearing a Christmas dress today.
Oh, right, now I can see, yes. Yeah. Brilliant.
So each day from the 1st of December, everybody wears something Christmassy. So I've got 5 or 6 outfits of different Christmas to wear. Staff team take part in it, the people we support take part in it. I've also got like a forfeit box, so if people don't turn up wearing Christmas attire, they have to wear something of the forfeit box. I've got multiple photographs of our male support workers wearing Christmas dresses and Christmas hats and Christmas glasses. So we do go a bit mad about Christmas here. We organise Secret Santa. We've got a Christmas party tomorrow, actually, where all the families and friends are invited in to take part in a Christmas party. We've organised lots of games and lots of food and celebrations, and family and friends will come as well. We've got a Christmas meal booked for all of our residents and all of the staff that are working that day to go on. We've got a joint Christmas party for the people we support with some other services that are local to us, where they're going to go and go to a local club. There's going to be person we support doing the DJing. We're arranging games and prizes and such like for that. So it's a real community spirit, really, Christmas. And we've got family coming for Christmas Day lunch as well. So yeah, we've got some people that go home to celebrate Christmas with their family. We've also got family coming here to celebrate Christmas as well. it's a real big thing, Christmas is.
Yeah, I can tell. And I think that is just a lovely note to end on, because it shows that, you know, in care services, we're not just supporting the people. You know, there's so much that you're doing with the staff and with the community. You know, it involves everybody, and I think that's really special, especially at a time like this when some people are lonely, just to make it a whole community thing and celebrate together. I think that's really special, and I think often it isn't appreciated or represented in, you know, the mainstream sound bites in the media. So that's lovely to hear what you're both doing at this festive time. Okay, so I think we're done. Thank you so much for joining our Coproduce Care chat. That was brilliant. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to sharing it. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.